The Galactic Archive had been silent for 6,000 years. Not the comfortable silence of a library, mind you. This was the kind of silence that made your scales itch, and your third stomach do uncomfortable somersaults. The kind of silence that whispered, "Something terrible happened here, and if you're smart you'll leave before you find out what." Naturally, we ignored that whisper completely. My name is Coordinator Vellish Pax, and I have made a career out of ignoring sensible warnings. I lead the Unified Species Archaeological Recovery Team, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the poor fool they send into ancient ruins when nobody else wants to risk their neck membranes. On this particular mission I was accompanied by my usual crew of questionable decisions. There was Technician Grumble, a Voxian whose name I had given him myself after listening to him complain for 3 straight cycles about the temperature controls on our ship. There was Security Chief Mora, a Kelfin warrior who stood nearly 3 meters tall and had the personality of a wet stone. And then there was our human consultant, a woman named Philippa Okonkwo, who had been assigned to us by the Terran Cultural Exchange Program. The humans had only been part of galactic society for about 40 years, which in cosmic terms meant they were still wearing the tags on their diplomatic credentials. Most species treated them with the polite condescension reserved for newcomers who hadn't yet learned which fork to use at formal dinners. I'll admit, I was guilty of this myself. Philippa was competent enough, certainly. She knew her way around ancient technology and had a peculiar talent for pattern recognition. But she was also, well, human. Soft, small, fragile-looking, with no natural armor, no venom glands, no redundant organs, the kind of species that made you wonder how they'd survived their own planet long enough to develop space travel. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the archive. The Galactic Archive of Velkoth Prime was built by the Precursors, that mysterious ancient civilization that every species in the galaxy both revered and feared. The Precursors had vanished roughly 12,000 years ago, leaving behind technology so advanced it made our best scientists weep with frustration. Their archives were scattered across the galaxy, each one containing fragments of knowledge that could revolutionize entire fields of study, or occasionally, weapons that could sterilize planets. The Precursors were not known for their restraint. This particular archive had been sealed since its discovery 2 centuries ago, after the initial survey team went inside and never came out. The Galactic Council had deemed it too dangerous to explore and had posted warning beacons around the entire system, which of course, only made everyone more curious. "The atmospheric readings are stable," Grumble announced, his voice carrying that particular tone of surprise he used when reality failed to match his pessimistic expectations. "Oxygen, nitrogen, trace elements. It's actually breathable. For some of us," Mora rumbled. She was wearing her full environmental suit, as Kelthans breathed a methane mixture that would make most species gag. "The Precursors were considerate hosts," I observed. "Or they wanted to lure people inside," Philippa said. We all turned to look at her. She shrugged, a peculiarly human gesture that involved lifting her shoulders in a way I found anatomically concerning. "Just saying. Breathable atmosphere, stable temperature, functioning lights, after 6,000 years. Either the Precursors were the most hospitable extinct civilization in history, or this place was designed to be entered." "That's not reassuring," I said. "It wasn't meant to be." I was beginning to understand why some species found humans unsettling. We proceeded into the archive proper, which was less a library and more a cathedral dedicated to the preservation of knowledge. The ceiling stretched so high that our lights couldn't reach it. The walls were lined with data storage units that hummed with dormant energy, and in the center of the main chamber stood the console. It was beautiful, in the way that predators are beautiful. Elegant lines, graceful curves, and an unmistakable sense of purpose that made my instincts scream warnings. The Precursors had built this console to be noticed, to be approached, to be used. "I don't like it," Mora said. "Noted," I replied. "Grumble, can you interface with it?" "Probably. The question is whether I should." "That's not your decision to make." He gave me a look that suggested he disagreed strongly but was too professional to say so. Then he approached the console and began connecting his diagnostic equipment. The moment his tools made contact, the entire archive came alive. Lights blazed to full intensity. The humming of the data storage units rose to a chorus, and the console itself projected a holographic interface that filled the chamber with images and text in a language none of us could read. "Well," I said, "that's not ominous at all." "I'm detecting a massive data transfer," Grumble reported. "The archive is accessing its central memory core. It's pulling up something, a lot of somethings. Can you tell what?" "Video files. Thousands of them, all tagged with the same classification marker." "Which is?" Grumble's face went pale. "Well, paler than usual. Voxians were already a rather ghostly shade of blue." "Combat recordings," he said. "Precursor combat recordings. This archive contains footage of the Precursor military in action." The silence that followed was profound. "You must understand, the Precursors were legends. Gods, almost. We knew they had been warriors because they had left behind weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand solar flares. But no one had ever seen them fight. No one knew what they looked like in battle. The Precursors had been so thorough in erasing their own history that even their appearance was a mystery. And now we were standing in front of an archive that contained footage of their actual military operations. "This is the discovery of the century," I breathed. "This is the discovery of the millennium," Grumble corrected. "We need to report this immediately," Mora said. "The Galactic Council will want play one." We all turned to look at Philippa. She was staring at the console with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fascination, certainly, but also something else. Something almost like recognition. "We should wait for proper authorization," I said. "Coordinator." Her voice was calm, steady, but there was an intensity behind it that made my scales prickle. "We've been inside this archive for less than an hour and it's already showing us things no one has seen in 6,000 years. Do you really think the Council will let a mixed species team anywhere near this footage once they know what's here? They'll classify it so deep we'll never hear about it again. This might be our only chance to actually see what the Precursors were." She had a point. I hated that she had a point. "One recording," I said. "Just to document what's here, then we report everything." "Of course," Philippa agreed. Her tone suggested she knew perfectly well that one recording was going to turn into a much longer session. Grumble manipulated the interface, sorting through the files until he found one that seemed appropriate. "This one's tagged as a training demonstration," he said. "Low intensity. Should be relatively safe." He activated the playback. The holographic display expanded to fill the entire chamber, surrounding us with the image of a Precursor military facility. The architecture was familiar from other Precursor ruins, all smooth curves and organic shapes, but this was clearly a combat arena of some kind, with observation galleries and what looked like medical stations positioned around the perimeter. And in the center of the arena stood a figure. It was bipedal, roughly humanoid in shape, though the proportions were slightly different. It wore armor that seemed to flow across its body like liquid metal, constantly shifting and adapting. Its face was hidden behind a helmet that revealed nothing, and it stood perfectly still, waiting. "That's a Precursor," Grumble whispered. "An actual Precursor warrior." None of us could speak. We were watching history. We were watching a legend made real. Then the demonstration began. Opponents entered the arena. Combat drones, from the look of them, though far more advanced than anything in our current arsenal. They attacked the Precursor from all sides, firing weapons and launching projectiles, and moving with a speed that my eyes could barely track. The Precursor moved faster. It was fluid, efficient. Every motion had purpose. Every strike was lethal. The Precursor didn't fight the drones so much as disassemble them, taking them apart with a precision that was almost surgical. In less than 30 seconds, the arena floor was littered with wreckage and the Precursor stood alone, not even breathing hard. "Magnificent," Mora breathed. Coming from a Kelthan warrior, that was high praise indeed. "Terrifying," Grumble corrected. I turned to ask Philippa for her assessment. She wasn't looking at the footage. She was looking at the console, scrolling through the file metadata, with an expression that had gone from fascination to something much more concerning. She looked worried. No, she looked scared. "Philippa, what's wrong?" She didn't answer immediately. Her fingers moved across the interface, pulling up data streams and cross-referencing information with a speed that suggested she was looking for something specific, something she hoped she wouldn't find. Then she stopped. "Coordinator," she said quietly, "this archive isn't classified by species." "What do you mean?" "The files. They're not organized by Precursor military units or time periods or locations. They're organized by something else entirely, a genetic marker." I felt my third stomach clench. "What kind of genetic marker?" Philippa looked up at me, and the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. "Human," she said. "Every combat recording in this archive is tagged with human DNA." The silence that followed Philippa's announcement was the kind that crushes. I stared at her. Grumble stared at her. Even Mora, who prided herself on emotional control that would make a meditation monk jealous, stared at her with her mouth slightly open. "That's impossible," I finally managed. "I'm looking at the data, Coordinator." "Then the data is corrupted. Humans have only been spacefaring for, what, 2 centuries? The Precursors vanished 12,000 years ago. The timeline doesn't work." "I know. So explain it." Philippa's jaw tightened. "I can't." "You can't? Or you won't?" She met my eyes, and I saw something there that made my scales lie flat against my body. It wasn't guilt exactly. It was the look of someone who had just discovered that a secret they'd been keeping might be far bigger than they'd ever imagined. "Play another file," she said. "Philippa, play another file. Please, I need to see something." Against every instinct I possessed, I nodded to Grumble. He selected another recording, this one tagged as an actual combat operation, rather than a training exercise. The hologram shifted. We were looking at a planet's surface now, though not one I recognized. The sky was the wrong color, a sickly orange that suggested atmospheric contamination. The ground was scorched and cratered, and across the landscape moved an army. Not precursors. These were something else entirely. Creatures that defied easy classification, all angles and edges and too many limbs. They swarmed across the terrain like locusts, thousands upon thousands of them, moving toward a structure in the distance that looked like it might have once been a city. Then the precursors arrived. There were only 12 of them. 12 warriors against an army that numbered in the tens of thousands. "They're going to be slaughtered," Mora said. They were not slaughtered. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of what violence looks like when it's been elevated to an art form. The precursor warriors moved through that army like wind through grass. They didn't just kill their enemies, they dismantled them. Systematically, efficiently, almost casually. One warrior in particular caught my attention. Their armor was slightly different from the others, marked with symbols that might have indicated rank. They fought at the center of the formation, and they fought like nothing I had ever seen, like nothing I had ever imagined. At one point, they were surrounded, completely encircled by enemies pressing in from all sides. Any reasonable tactician would have called it a death sentence. The warrior simply smiled. Well, their helmet retracted for just a moment, and I could have sworn I saw them smile. Then they moved. I don't have the words to describe what happened next. My language doesn't contain the vocabulary. In approximately 4 seconds, that warrior killed everything within a 15-meter radius using nothing but their hands and a blade that seemed to materialize from nowhere. They moved so fast that even the recording had trouble tracking them. They were there, and then they were everywhere, and then they were standing alone in a circle of corpses. The helmet closed again. The warrior rolled their shoulders, a gesture that seemed almost annoyed, like the fight had been an inconvenience rather than a life-or-death struggle. The recording ended. Grumble, I said. My voice was not steady. That genetic marker, can you isolate it? Show us what it's actually tracking. Already working on it. His fingers flew across the interface. Data streams cascaded through the holographic display, complex sequences of information that meant nothing to me but clearly meant something to him. His face grew progressively paler. Coordinator, the genetic marker isn't tracking ancestry or lineage. It's tracking something else. A specific set of genes that appear in the precursor warrior genome. Genes that are, he swallowed, genes that are identical to sequences found in modern human DNA. Identical, I repeated. Not similar, not related, identical. The same genes, preserved perfectly across 12,000 years. I turned to Philippa. She was staring at the space where the hologram had been, her face unreadable, but her hands were shaking. Just slightly, just enough to notice if you were looking. Philippa, what do you know about this? She closed her eyes, took a breath. And when she spoke, her voice was very quiet. There are stories, old ones, older than our recorded history. Stories about humans who were more, faster, stronger, more resilient. We called them different things in different cultures. Heroes, demigods, monsters, sometimes. We thought they were myths, exaggerations, the kind of legends every species tells about their ancient past. She opened her eyes. We were wrong. You're saying humans are descended from the precursors? No. I'm saying humans are precursors. Or we were once, before something changed us, reduced us, made us less. Mora stepped forward. Her hand was resting on her weapon, though I don't think she was even aware of it. If humans were precursors, why don't you have their abilities? Why are you so... She searched for a diplomatic word. Fragile, Philippa suggested. Weak? Pathetic? I was going to say limited. Same thing. Philippa laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't know, maybe it was deliberate. Maybe the precursors did something to themselves, bred out the dangerous parts, tried to become something gentler. Or maybe it was natural evolution. 12,000 years is a long time, things change. Not that much, Grumble said. Not genetically. The sequences we're seeing, they're not dormant. They're active. Suppressed maybe, but active. Which means... He trailed off. Which means what? I demanded. Which means the potential is still there, in every human. The capacity for what we just watched, it's not gone. It's just sleeping. I looked at Philippa with new eyes. This small, soft, fragile-looking creature. This human who I had privately considered the least threatening member of my team. She carried within her the genetic legacy of the most terrifying warriors the galaxy had ever known. Philippa, can you do what we just saw? Can any human do that? She was quiet for a long moment. There are stories, she said again. Soldiers who perform impossible feats in combat. Mothers who lift vehicles off their children. People who survive things that should absolutely kill them. We call it adrenaline. Survival instinct. But maybe... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. We need to report this, Mora said. Immediately. The Galactic Council has to know. No. We all looked at Philippa. No, this is the most significant discovery in... I know what it is. Her voice was hard now. Sharp. I also know what happens when this information gets out. Humans are already treated like children by half the galaxy. What do you think happens when everyone learns we're descended from the precursors, from warriors who could slaughter armies single-handedly? Best case scenario, we become a curiosity, a specimen to be studied. Worst case, she didn't need to finish that thought either. The council will find out eventually, I said. We can't suppress this forever. I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for time. Time to understand what this means. Time to figure out why the precursors became us. Time to... The console chimed. We all froze. Grumble? What was that? His face had gone from pale to actively grey. The archive. It's responding to something. Running a new search protocol. We didn't initiate any search. I know. The holographic display activated again. But this time we hadn't selected anything. The archive was showing us something on its own. Something it wanted us to see. A single file, tagged with that same genetic marker, but the timestamp wasn't 12,000 years old. It was from 6 months ago. That's not possible, I breathed. This archive has been sealed for... The Precursors had monitoring systems throughout the galaxy, Philippa said. Her voice was strange, distant. Satellites, probes, observation posts. Most of them went dark when they disappeared, but some... She was staring at the file tag with an expression I couldn't identify. Some of them are still watching. Grumble looked at me. Should I play it? Every sensible instinct I possessed screamed, no. This was too much, too fast, too dangerous. I nodded. The hologram materialized. We were looking at a human city. Modern, current. I recognized the architecture from cultural briefings. Tall buildings, crowded streets, vehicles moving along predetermined paths. A perfectly ordinary day in a perfectly ordinary place. Then something went wrong. A building collapsed. Not from structural failure, from impact. Something had hit it. Something big. People ran. Screamed. The recording tracked them with cold precision, documenting their panic without judgment. And then a figure emerged from the dust. Human. Female. Small. Unremarkable in every visible way. She looked at the destruction around her, at the chaos, at the thing that was pulling itself from the rubble of the building it had just destroyed. I saw her face change. Something behind her eyes shifted. Something woke up. And then she moved. She moved like the Precursor in the training video. Fluid. Efficient. Impossible. She crossed a distance that should have taken seconds in a fraction of a heartbeat. She struck the creature with her bare hands, and the impact sent it through 2 walls. The fight lasted 11 seconds. The creature didn't survive. The woman stood there afterward, breathing hard, staring at her own hands like she didn't recognize them. Like she didn't know what she'd just... The recording ended. The silence was absolute. Philippa reached out and touched the console, pulled up the file data, read it, and then she laughed. It was not a happy sound. Philippa? I asked carefully. The file's tagged with biometric data, she said. The archive knows who she is. It's been tracking her. Tracking all of us, probably. Anyone who shows signs of... She gestured vaguely at the space where the hologram had been. That... Who is she? Philippa turned to look at me, and her smile was terrible. Me, she said. That's me. 6 months ago. Downtown Toronto. I thought I'd imagined it. Trauma response. Shock. I was so sure I'd imagined it. She looked down at her hands. I didn't imagine it. Mora's weapon was out now. Pointed at Philippa. The Kelthan's face was rigid with something that might have been fear. Don't, I said. She's dangerous. She's been on this team for 3 months. If she wanted to hurt us, she would have done it already. Maybe she was waiting. For what? Mora didn't have an answer for that. Philippa hadn't moved. Hadn't reacted to the weapon pointed at her. She was still staring at her hands. It felt like waking up, she said quietly. Like I'd been asleep my whole life, and suddenly I was awake. Everything was so clear, so slow. I could see every detail, hear every heartbeat, feel every vibration in the air. She looked up, and then it was gone, like a door slamming shut, and I was just me again. Ordinary, limited. She met Mora's eyes. You can put that away. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I couldn't even if I wanted to. That thing, whatever it was, it doesn't come when I call it. It just happens. In moments of extreme stress, and then it goes away again. The suppression, Grumble said slowly. The genetic suppression we detected. It's not complete. It can be overridden. Temporarily. Lucky me. I made a decision. It was probably the wrong one, but I made it anyway. Mora, weapon down. Coordinator. That's an order. The Kelthan hesitated. Then slowly, she holstered her sidearm. Thank you, Philippa said. Don't thank me yet. We need to figure out what to do with this information. All of it. The archive, the genetic connection, your episode. We destroy it. Everyone looked at Grumble. We destroy the archive, he said. Wipe the data, collapse the facility, make sure no one ever finds this. That's knowledge worth more than anything in the galaxy, I protested. That's a weapon worth more than anything in the galaxy. How long do you think it takes before someone decides to figure out how to wake up the precursor genes in every human in the galaxy? How long before some government or corporation or military decides they want an army of those? He pointed at the empty space where Philippa's footage had been. The precursors are gone for a reason. Maybe they destroyed themselves. Maybe they did something so terrible they chose to disappear. But they're gone, and maybe that's how it should stay. I looked at Philippa. She was staring at the console, at the files it contained, at 12,000 years of history that belonged to her species in a way none of us had ever imagined. Philippa, this is your heritage, your people's legacy. Do you want to destroy it? She was quiet for a very long time. Yes, she said finally. Grumble's right. Some doors should stay closed. She reached out and began the deletion sequence. The archive died quietly. No alarms. No countermeasures. Almost as if it had been waiting for this. Waiting for someone to come and finally let it rest. We left Velkoth Prime 3 hours later. Our official report mentioned an archive too damaged to recover. A dead end. A waste of time. No one questioned it. On the journey home, I found Philippa alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. Any regrets? I asked. She considered the question. That footage? The training demonstration? That warrior who killed 30 drones in 30 seconds? She paused. I could feel it, watching them, like a memory I didn't know I had. Like my body knew those movements even though I'd never made them. Does that frighten you? Terrifies me. She smiled faintly. But also, no, not really. I know what I am now, what we all are. And knowing is better than not knowing, even if the knowledge is uncomfortable. And if it happens again, the waking up. Philippa Okonkor, consultant, human descendant of the most terrifying warriors the galaxy had ever produced, looked out at the infinite darkness between the stars. Then I'll try very hard to make sure I'm fighting on the right side. She turned back to me. Do me a favor, coordinator. What? If you ever see me having a bad day, a really bad day, she smiled, and for just a moment I saw something ancient looking out from behind her eyes. Mute the recording. Trust me. You don't want the sound on. I believed her. Stars help me. I believed her.